All right. Well, thank you so much. We have a good turnout. Looks good. Hey, Marianne. All right. Well, hello and welcome to the District 7 City Council Race Candidate Forum sponsored by Albuquerque Indivisible. We're very happy you have chosen to join us this evening. Before we go on, please take a moment right now to turn off your electronic devices or put them on complete silence. You'll see mine right here. I'm not waiting for an important phone call. It'll help me keep track of time as well as our timekeeper. So that's why I have that there. So please make sure those are turned off. We don't really want any disruptions. And if you see a phone call or a text come in, you need to take it, please leave the space before you do so, okay? Thank you. My name is Paula Jackson, and I have lived in Albuquerque for 25 years and taught, and I'm still teaching for Albuquerque Public Schools for all 25 of those years. I'm a member of Nasty Women New Mexico, and I'm honored to have been asked to moderate tonight's event with Diane Gibson, our current City Councilwoman for District 7 and a candidate in this year's District 7 election. Let me briefly explain the format for tonight.
Your mic went off.
I thought it might have. I wasn't as loud as I usually am. Is that better? No?
Okay.
That's okay. Should I just keep going and you'll work on it? Is it the way I'm holding it? Okay. Technical difficulty, just like last night on America's Got Talent. Anybody watch that? No?
I read it.
Yeah, there were 2 acts that had major technical difficulties.
Check. Now let's go.
It's all right. Good news is I'm plenty loud, so if it doesn't work, we'll be okay. All right. There are no other candidates here tonight, so Ms. Gibson and I will basically just be having a conversation, a question and answer conversation about issues facing Albuquerque today. Questions have been thoughtfully prepared and researched by a variety of involved people, and some of the questions I will ask have been submitted online by Albuquerque citizens across the city. And if I'm correct, these questions will be asked hopefully by all the city council candidates, not just District 7 here. Ms. Gibson will have approximately 4 minutes to answer the questions. Our event is scheduled to last until 7:30 p.m. and tonight's forum will be taped and is also being live streamed on the Power Through Peace Facebook page, which you guys won't need because you're here, but just in case. Now, with all that business out of the way, let me introduce Diane Gibson, our current District 7 City Council member and our candidate tonight. Councilor Diane Gibson is serving her first term as City Councilor representing District 7. Councilor Gibson moved to New Mexico in 1975. She, like many other transplants, fell in love with the beauty and the culture here in Albuquerque. Councilor Gibson was born and raised in Detroit to working-class parents who worked hard and highly valued education. Her family now lives in Colorado, where she frequently visits. She retired from Sandia National Laboratory in 2008, where she began her career as a prototype machinist. At that time, she was only the 3rd woman hired into the apprenticeship program. The 11 years before retiring, Councilor Gibson worked as an environment, safety, security, and health coordinator, ensuring a safe, environmentally responsible workplace for over 200 employees. Councilor Gibson hosts 2 town hall meetings a year, one each in the spring and fall for her district. Additionally, there are a morning and an evening coffee with the councilor the 4th week of every month. All events are advertised on the District 7 website. Councilor Gibson is honored to serve the people of the district and welcomes them to these events. Some of the appointments that Councilor Gibson has had for 2017 include the Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee, Intergovernmental and Legislative Relations, Mid-Region Council of Governments Board, Metropolitan Transportation Board, Regional Transit District, you're busy, Community Schools, Committee on Guidelines for Negotiations, New Mexico Municipal League, Pay Equity Task Force, and the Winrock TIDD Board, and she's the chairperson of that. So, quite an accomplishment. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Are you ready to begin?
I am ready.
All righty. First question. Which qualities do you think are most needed right now in a city council member?
Qualities. I think first and foremost is a genuine curiosity. I don't care what your background is. It would help to, I guess, to have a legal background or something to do with land use or planning. if you wanted to become a counselor, but any kind of background you have, you're going to learn a whole lot more. And that, I can almost guarantee that. So it's good to have a natural curiosity and, be willing to put some time into doing research and asking questions and discussing things with not only the staff. We have a wonderful staff at City Council, but reaching out into the community for people who really understand things that you may not understand yourself very well. And I've done this. I started this actually 4 years ago when I was campaigning for the election 4 years ago. And I met so many people at their doorsteps. I remember meeting a lady who knew so much about homeschooling, another gentleman who knew quite a bit about the after-school programs at APS. I met this man. It was a wonderful, it was like, I was supposed to meet this man and his wife, and they taught me a lot about brain injuries, and so now I go to their meetings because it's fascinating, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. Not necessarily at a city level, but still, it's fascinating. So I think a natural curiosity is, and really a willingness to want to do the work. This is supposed to be a part-time job. Somebody's going to tell me if I talk too long, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is supposed to be a part-time job, but I can tell you, it really isn't. This is a full-time job. So, and when I meet people at their doorstep now, as I'm walking through the neighborhoods, I tell them that, and I tell them, I work 7 days a week. I work holidays, weekends, nights. People get emails from me at 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's not a complaint because I love this job. And I'm a bit of a nerd and a workaholic. So I think that's my time.
There you go. Thank you. Pretend you are leading Albuquerque's tourism campaign. Which are the top aspects you would highlight about the city, and you're not allowed to lie even a little bit?
Okay, I don't know why I would want to lie on that one.
I don't either. It's in the question. I'm reading it as it was written.
Okay. There's so many really choice places to bring people to first time they come to the city. One of my favorites is the Hispanic Cultural Center. Just visually, it is such a dramatic place to be, and it right up against the Bosque really enhances the effect. The Torreon there, I had the great pleasure of meeting the artist and actually helping to get him some funding to do a painting, a mural actually in Spain. I'm getting off topic. So that's one of my very favorite places. Besides that, I would say the Bosque, just taking a walk along the Bosque, just about anywhere. I used to go to the Bosque and up towards Corrales, and really, really enjoyed that. Our zoo is dynamite, for this little postage stamp, practically piece of land that we have there. We have done some really, really remarkably cool things with that zoo, and we continue to do so thanks to the generosity of taxpayers who voted in that tax hike. Where else? I would say there's a number of historical places along Rio Grande, actually up even in Corrales. The Hubble House is one of them. So there's a place in Old Town. We all like to take our family to Old Town, right? But there's this little chapel. Do y'all know about the little chapel? It's on the north side, maybe a block, northeast, and it's been there since I've been told the 70s. I discovered it on a ghost tour. I took the ghost tour downtown, in Old Town rather, and that was a lot of fun. I really heard a lot of the history of Old Town. So that would be something that I would want to highlight. Am I answering the?
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Personally, I really like going up on the tram. A lot of people are a little shy about heights, and I am too a little bit, but I really enjoy that. And you get to go up to a whole different ecosystem and temperate zone in a very short period of time. You can go from like 100 degrees to maybe 70 degrees in 20 or 30 minutes.
Bless you.
There are a lot of, the chemo. The chemo, I think, is my very, very favorite place in all of Albuquerque. And if you've never taken the tour there, you can go into the office as long as there's nothing going on in the theater, and they will give you a tour. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's beautiful, beautiful space. I think it's the most beautiful theater I've ever been to.
I'd have to agree with you on all those places. I've lived here 25 years and I love them all. That's great, especially the zoo. And I've lived in a lot of big cities. This zoo is amazing. We're going to move on now to some topic areas. First, we're going to talk about veterans and mental health. Veterans who may originate from other countries who choose to serve in the U.S. military are supposed to be granted the right to naturalization via the processes outlined in INA Section 328, 329. Have you got that one memorized? Unfortunately, this is not being honored and only applies to veterans who have been honorably discharged. Because of issues such as PTSD, combat stress, and other emotionally vulnerable issues, veterans, combat and non-combat veterans, often struggle with the law. Unnaturalized veterans who are arrested are then put through the system once law enforcement discovers they are non-citizens, thus potentially placed in detention and deported to their countries of origin. How do you, Diane, propose to advocate for veterans who may be at risk of deportation within the Albuquerque area?
So, this falls very far away from the influence that I have as a city councilor, right? City council can't touch any of this. But I did not know this, so whoever submitted this question obviously knows quite a bit about it. I am aware and have been made aware of the detention center that we have west of town. I think it's around Milan, where they're holding, they're detaining people who lack credentials here, who are not citizens. And ICE does not seem to be in a hurry to process these people, and I think that is a shame, that they're just being held in limbo. So what would I do, or what will I do now that I have this newfound knowledge? I will probably, let's see, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll write a letter. I will write a letter, make 3 copies, and send it one to each of the senators and to my federal representative, Michelle Lujan Grisham, and ask that they look into this and start following the law.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that you hadn't heard about it before and then also having an idea of something to do. Thank you. Healthy workforce. Hopefully we've all heard about that recently. Do you support the Earned Paid Sick Leave Ballot Initiative, otherwise known as Healthy Workforce Act? Yes or no?
Okay, so I can't give you a yes or no on that.
Well, the follow-up was a why or why not. So
Okay.
if you can fill in the blanks, that would be great.
I would be glad to. So I absolutely 100% believe that all workers should have access to sick time. That's a moral issue, I believe, public health issue. Who among us wants to have our salad made by someone who has the flu, or who's worried about their kid who has the flu? That's just not acceptable. We should be offering sick time. And I know small businesses who are doing that right now. And they're not having trouble. They're not folding up. I know it'll be a challenge for some employers more than others. And we're just going to have to figure this out. Now, this particular ordinance does have problems. I've read this ordinance several times. I've had several meetings on it. And I think we can do better. Here's my fear. I'll just get right down to the brass tacks on this. Here's my fear. That once early voting starts in just a few weeks, right? I think that we are going to pass this because I think most of the people living in the city of Albuquerque feel the same way. And then I'm afraid that it's going to go into the courts and be hung up in the courts. My fear is then we still will not have coverage, this type of coverage, for all of our workers here in Albuquerque. That's my fear.
Thank you. All right, the next set of questions has to do with climate change and the Paris Climate Accord. And we have about 4 or 5 questions on that. President Trump announced that the U.S. will be pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, joining Syria and Nicaragua as the only 3 nations in the world to reject the accord. In response, 350 U.S. cities, and it may be more as of right now, have pledged to uphold the Paris Agreement, including Santa Fe and Las Cruces. For the record, and this is a yes or no, if elected, would you vote for a city council resolution stating that Albuquerque will support the Paris Climate Agreement?
I have not even considered that, but I think it's a good idea. I guess my answer is a qualified yes, and I'm only adding the qualification because I'm a very careful person, and I want to know about things and find out as much as I can before I make a decision. But definitely, I believe that we as a country are disservicing ourselves as well as the world by pulling out of the Paris Accord. This is not the time to be doing things like that. And I'm very sorry that this president has chosen that path to take.
Thank you. Please share with us your vision for sustainable growth and development in Albuquerque. Specifically, could you please address urban sprawl, quality of life investment, and creating a clean energy economy for our city?
That is really a good question. So District 7, the district that we're in right now, goes on the south side is Lomas, north side is Montgomery, east side is bounded by Eubank and then Carlisle on the west side. Except just north of I-40, it goes farther west all the way to I-25. Even there's a few fingers that even go out west of I-25 up by Montgomery. So we're kind of an island within the city, right? We don't touch the edges of development as it is now, like what we see on the west side. I am generally more of an infill person than I am in expanding our borders right now. I don't mean borders, that's poor choice, but expanding on the edges. It's more expensive, for one thing. It's more expensive to build along the edges because of all the infrastructure that has to go in. You know, besides the utilities, the schools, the roads, we have to have a more police presence out there, more fire presence out there. So we're talking about building those buildings. So I'm more of an infill person, and we have some really good projects that have gone in within District 7 and other parts of the city that are considered infill projects. And I hope those continue. I will certainly will support them and help them to continue that way. But I have to recognize that with all of that open space on the west side, there will be development out there, right? I would like to see more opportunities for jobs on the west side. So, you know, we're working on the IDO now, right? Does everybody know what the IDO is? It's an integrated development ordinance. We started with the plan, the comprehensive plan, and now we're doing the thou shalts. And briefly, I know enough about this to get myself into trouble real quick, but very generally, what we're doing on the west side is we're zoning more areas for commercial, right? So that builders and investors will develop more businesses, business properties on the west side. And I think that's a good idea. That's a good idea because there's such an imbalance of jobs per capita between the west side and the east side. And, you know, I used to live on the west side. You know, I get it. Nobody likes that schlep back and forth across the river, and it's not getting any easier getting back and forth across the river. So we need to have more jobs on the west side. You know, the build out will continue. I just want us to do it smart, make smart decisions, and you know, try not to invest too much of our future GRT in helping developers develop residential areas.
Thank you. I'm going to add on to this from what we have here. I actually live on the west side, and I've lived on the west side for 14 years now, but I work over here by the university. So I schlep that drive every day. And I'm going to go on. First of all, I have noticed more business development up and down course and then in that area, and I have some positives and negatives about it, but it will bring jobs, which is great. My question to you, though, is you mentioned it. Any ideas for dealing with the traffic to help ease that problem of urban sprawl that comes with that trek back and forth across the river?
Well, we need a transit system that's appealing, that is easy to use, that's predictable, that's reliable, one that we feel safe on. So everybody knows we're building the ART up and down Central, right? It's not enough. I use the swimming pool example when I talk about the ART project. Imagine you're living in your house and you just have to have a swimming pool. So you put in $1 million swimming pool in a house that costs maybe $300,000, let's say. $1 million swimming pool. You're so very proud of it. So are you going to put Kmart furniture around that swimming pool? Probably not. You're going to put nice furniture around that. So let me explain. The swimming pool is the art project. The rest of the transit system is our furniture. Are we going to continue using crappy furniture around our multi-million-dollar art system? I think not. So I am willing to battle, but I need all of you guys behind me, backing me up when we start going into future budgets to build an even better transit system. And actually, you know what? Ours really isn't bad now. I know people right now are thinking, oh, I want to argue with her. But you know what? I've gone without a car for a number of months last year, used the bus and a little bit of Uber, and I got around not badly. It wasn't great. It wasn't Chicago or anything like that, but it wasn't bad. But we do need more north-south buses. We need better connections east-west, and we need help on the west side. So if you've ever been over on Central and, Coors, what else is out there? Any of the north-south streets on Central, West Central. About 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8:30 in the morning, you're sitting in a parking lot. Now, I live over here, so what the heck am I doing over there at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm having breakfast with Ken Sanchez because he works there. And it's horrible. And I'm told the same thing happens on the far east end of Central. So hopefully, art will help alleviate some of that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Albuquerque shares the distinction of being one of America's communities with the highest tree losses. Over the last decade, we have lost more than 10% of our trees. These tree losses will take decades to regrow and replace, if we even can replace them. We started with less canopy cover than most cities, and still we have lost much of that cover. Can you commit to protecting our community's tree assets? What can you do to help stop these losses and ultimately replace these lost values to our community?
So I think we learned really well when we went into our drought to cut back on our water use. But in doing that, taking out a lot of our grass and heavily watered areas, our trees suffered. That happened in my, where I live. I just had to cut down an apricot tree that's probably about 50 years old. So maybe it was close to its end of life anyway, but, the drought didn't help. And the fact that I wasn't watering it the way I should have certainly didn't help. So, the city has done a number of things in the past 4 years. We finally hired an urban forester. He's from District 7. He's a great guy, and I'm stalling trying to remember his name. Joran Veers. Did I get that right, Chris? Okay, Joran Veers. He is a great guy, and he knows his trees. This man loves trees. So he's helping us in our parks. We have a few of our parks in District 7 where the trees are aging out, and he's helping us get them replaced. So that's on city property. On private property, the city's kind of limited, really, on what we can do. We can educate people, and Joran is working really hard trying to do that. I'm sure there's some room for improvement that maybe we can consider going forward. But what was I going to say? Something about
Private property?
Yeah, on private property. Every year, the city has a tree giveaway. And they're not very big. They're just little saplings like this. But they usually have maybe 4 or 5 different species of trees, and they're specially selected for people's front yards, backyards, take low water, usually immune to disease and bugs as much as they can be. So it happens every April, and we do it in different parks around the city. So look for that. Look for that.
That's amazing. I didn't know about that. I've lived here 25 years. How many of you knew about that? Good. Some of you did. A lot of you didn't, though. That is wonderful information, and that can help. And the education piece. Thank you. That's good. Moving on to affordable housing. Trump's HUD Secretary, Ben Carson, has proposed... Sorry. I tried not to do that. Trump's HUD Secretary, Ben Carson, has proposed eliminating community development block grants that cities like Albuquerque use to revitalize neighborhoods and provide affordable housing. What would you recommend to fellow councilors and to our new mayor that the city do to continue without these funds?
To continue what? Affordable housing?
To continue to revitalize neighborhoods and provide affordable housing if indeed we do lose these funds.
Well, CDBG, I find that hard to say sometimes. Those grants, those block grants have been diminishing over years. So, and I don't know what to compare it to. I've only been around the city now for 4 years, but they used to substantially fund many things, and they don't so much anymore. In fact, I don't know how much of that goes into affordable housing. Mary Ann might even know better than that. I'm not asking you, but I just saw you. I thought, I bet she knows the answer to that. But I can tell you that they're diminishing. But I mean, if in fact he cuts those grants, that is going to affect cities all over this country in the most direst of ways. So I hope and I pray that doesn't happen. But let's talk about affordable housing. So I got a lot to say about affordable housing.
Well, we have a lot of questions on affordable housing.
Okay.
So do you want to move on to those, or do you have any ideas for what might help replace those funds if they are, or we want to go with let's just hope they aren't for right now?
Well, the city has been doing something. I mean, the city has established a workforce housing trust fund. Yeah, and we fund it through the budget every year. A lot of that is the GO bonds. Some of it comes out of general funds, the general fund, and a very significant chunk will be coming from the Winrock TID. Do I have enough time to talk about that?
Why don't you take about a minute and a half? Is that good?
Yeah, that's
okay,
good.
Go for it.
Okay, as you heard, I am the chair for the TID for Winrock.
You want to explain what TID is to people who might not know?
Sure. A TID is a tax increment development district. In just a small definition of that, it's a geographical area where some of the gross receipts taxes go to help build out that area, the infrastructure. It builds infrastructure, which is then deeded to the city. But that helps the developer get going, and that's what we're doing over at Winrock. Okay, that's a very basic definition. Anyway, we had to rebase the tax years. Not necessarily know what a rebasing the tax years, but it's pretty much what it sounds like. And in order to do that, we had to reopen the development agreement. And part of the development agreement said that the developer would give $5,000 per resident that they're building in Winrock to the Workforce Housing Trust Fund, which is a good deal. Well, he saw this as a pretty good time to get rid of that good deal for the city. And I said, no, we're not getting rid of that. So we had some serious conversations about that. Not only did we keep it in, but I strengthened it. So $5,000, that's going to, per residence, as that's built out, that's going to be over $2 million coming from Winrock into affordable housing.
Excellent, excellent. In your opinion, we're going to talk about public housing, affordable housing, which you have some good ideas, I'm sure. In your opinion, what are the top 3 interventions, excluding expanding the housing stock, that would answer both unhoused people's needs and housed people's concerns?
So we have in this city somewhere between 600 to several thousand vacant homes that are problematic. Weeds, litter, people breaking in, illegal activities, all of the above. That's an enormous amount for any place to have. In a city Albuquerque size, it's very daunting. So what I have done is, because frankly, I didn't know what else to do. I've done what I can do, and it's not working. It's not working very well or very quickly enough. Is that I'm putting together a task force. We just passed that. No, next meeting. It'll be in the next meeting. A task force to look at different options for vacant homes that are that have become problematic. Many of these, but not all of them, many of them are bank owned. Many more of them are not yet bank owned, but are in the process of foreclosure. And foreclosure, as y'all, I'm sure, aware of this, can go on for a very long time. It's difficult for the city because they're still, privately owned. It seems to me, though, that we have an inventory. We don't have it, but it exists in the city of potentially a solution for the dearth of affordable housing. We need affordable housing in the city very badly. And so now we have these houses that are not being used. Some of them are really not in bad shape. Some of them are in horrible shape. So if we can figure out how to, take the ownership from the bank, either put it on the city, put it on a nonprofit, whatever, and then rehab these houses, put them back out on the market for market rate, and allow people to buy them. Make it so that, in fact, many families, maybe they could live in a house that's a little bit bigger than what they would have been able to afford or qualify without intervention. Maybe live in a different neighborhood, maybe closer to a school. All of these things will help. All of these things will help stop growing the homeless population while they refurbish and grow our affordable housing stock, and get rid of blight that's happening right next door to many of us, or down the street from many of us. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know what other cities do. Maybe some other city has found a way to do this. But hopefully this task force will come up with some options for us.
Thank you. Would you pave the way for organized and regulated settlements that include tents and/or vehicles used as homes?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I can tell you that, in fact, just this afternoon, I was at a weekly tiny home village meeting. This is something that Commissioner Debbie O'Malley and I have initiated, and we've been meeting on this for well over a year, coming up on 2 years now. And I think it's important because it offers a different option. You know, the way that we've been handling the city, when I say we, I mean the city, has been handling addressing homelessness is by building apartment buildings. And these are great places. You drive by them all the time, and I bet you don't even know that they're workforce housing is the same thing as affordable housing. I use them both interchangeably. Great projects, but I think I really believe that we need to offer different alternatives, different options. For example, in the past 3 years, we have seen a migration of people who are living without the benefit of roofs coming out of the downtown and the near North Valley and Bareilles neighborhoods out into the neighborhoods around here, District 7. And in the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen encampments along I-40 on both the south side and north side of I-40. So 2 years ago, my office means Chris, who's sitting over there. I'll introduce him in a little bit. We were able to effectively house 90 people during that summer. That was great. That was really a good thing. They stay housed, and we're really happy for that. But the folks who were left behind are the ones who are most likely self-medicating, most likely antisocial, don't really want help. Those are the ones who are a little bit threatening, maybe, if somebody from healthcare from the homeless came up to approach them. So those are the people I really worry about.
We're going to move on.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And I think we're going to try to pick it up a little. So I think I'm going to cut down to about 3 minutes per question. Does that work? Because we have a ton of questions and we got a lot submitted by people. So just so you know, I'm going to give you about 1 less minute.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to APD reform. Dr. James Ginger, an independent monitor, has estimated that APD is currently in compliance with approximately 50%, only 50% of the terms of the Department of Justice's consent decree. Of even greater concern is APD Forward's analysis that the most important policies, those regarding use of force, are estimated at only 25% compliance. As a city councilor, what will you do to ensure that APD complies fully with all 287 terms of the DOJ's consent decree?
I will do what I have been doing, and that is going to the monthly meetings with Dr. Ginger and the police union, APOA, Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DOJ civil rights attorneys who are usually come in by phone, and command staff. And I will sit through those meetings, continue to sit through those very boring meetings. Every once in a while we get some excitement. But mostly they're very boring meetings, and the reason I do that is because I want APD to know that council is paying attention. We haven't just dusted off our hands and gone on to the next thing. This is costing all of you, me, all of us, a lot of money. You know, it's not good enough just to go through the motions. So what will I do? I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and I am going to vote for a mayor who I know who's going to take charge.
Thank you. Based on data provided by APD, the current police force is 13% female, 87% male. And the ethnicity breakdown is 58% Caucasian, 37% Hispanic, with 1.5% or less African American, Native American, and Asian. How would you recommend the city recruit and retain qualified and diverse police officers?
Oh, that is a very good question, because believe me, I've noted that myself. In fact, I've said it in open chambers during a council meeting when the command staff was standing, all of them, in the very back. I noted a lack of diversity. So what I have already done is I have hosted and participated in a recruitment day at UNM on the campus. And APD sent over several officers and tables and the banners and, literature for people to look at. But this is what I saw. This is what I witnessed. These very nice police officers who are kind of shy. They just want to sit back behind the table and wait for somebody to stop. So I said, that's not how you do this. So I said, watch me. And I got up and just, sure enough, there's a couple of students, 2 female students, and I walked up to them. I said, have you ever thought of a career in public safety and law enforcement? And one of them kept walking, the other one stopped, and she came over. So we need to be doing this in every campus, at every college and university throughout the state of New Mexico, and put out put out people like me, who are not afraid to talk with people and engage with people. That's how we're going to get more cadets. That's how we're going to get more diversity, and they come from a college environment. This is a good thing.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to immigration. In February, City Council reaffirmed Albuquerque's status as an immigrant-friendly city, and in doing so, its adherence to policies regarding immigrants and their families, as outlined in City Resolution 151. And for those of you who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you do know, but immigrant city is different than a sanctuary city. So we're just talking about immigrant city here, immigrant friendly. For the record, and this is a yes or a no, because I'm going to move on to something else right after it. Do you support Albuquerque being an immigrant friendly city?
Yes. I voted for it. I sponsored it.
Excellent. I knew you did, but I had to ask that. That being said, how will you protect targeted immigrant communities in Albuquerque? And in your answer, please address how you would instruct APD to collaborate with federal immigration authorities.
Well, that I believe is in 151, that we don't do that. Personally, how will I do that? I have taken, since the inauguration, I have taken, every opportunity that I had to say something, to speak to an audience and talk about how, hey, we're all in this together. We're not leaving any bodies behind. We're all in this together. We're all going to move together. We're all going to hang on together, and we're going to get through this.
Okay. Let's move on to Santa Lena. Hot topic lately. Bernalillo County is projected to grow by over 300,000 over the next 25 years. And I tell you, they can't all fit on the west side. The developers of Santa Lena expect that a quarter of these new residents will live in Santa Lena. Where do you expect or want those 300,000 citizens to live in 2040? In Santa Lena and Mesa del Sol? in major centers like downtown, uptown, Cottonwood, and along corridors like Central Avenue and San Mateo, or just inside the pre-1960 boundaries of the city?
Well, actually, Mr. Cog has actually done quite a bit of work on this, and I've participated in some of the sessions that they've had open to the public for future growth, and you know, a lot of that obviously is on the west side. That's where the land is. Where do I expect those people to live? I think that, you know, as I've already stated before, I prefer infill projects, you know, to the extent possible, and then, you know, building out at the along the edges. But, you know, just to throw down the gauntlet and say, oh, no more building permits for you on the west side, you know, that's not going to work. You can't do that. So I just hope and pray and trust that, you know, that we make sound decisions in developing the west side. By the way, Santolina, I believe it was Councilor Benton who had offered a resolution to the council that would have allowed the council to discuss and debate pros and cons of Santolina within the council and give an opinion to the commission. And that was beat down soundly. It never got to pass. And it's too bad because it should have passed. I mean, it's going to affect us. We use the same water utility, you know. We have the same kind of constraints that the county has with developing something out in that area. And strangely enough, or maybe it's not strangely enough, the 3 councilors who represent the west side voted against that resolution. All 3 of them.
Speaking of the water, with increasing climate chaos, and if over 300,000 more people will live in Bernalillo County served by Water Utility Authority, smaller water districts and private wells, how will we provide adequate water for them and everyone else living here?
Well, water management, that seems pretty obvious to me. We have to use wise water management. We've already demonstrated that we can stop watering as much as we need to. I think that, you know, I don't think you can live in Albuquerque and not develop a sensitivity for water usage. I remember my father used to come to visit me, and he'd leave the water on in the sink, and oh, and it was like going like this on a blackboard. So I think we're sensitive to it, but we need to make sure that the Water Utility Authority is sensitive to it. I'm not on the Water Utility Authority. I would love to be, but I'm not. But I'm on enough other boards and commissions.
Okay, let's move on to poverty. That's big here. In 2014, 30% of our Albuquerque families were living below the poverty line. Let me repeat that, 30%. I don't know if you were aware of that. Defined as $23,850 for a family of 2 adults and 2 children. As a state, we rank number 1 for hungry children and the percentage of children living in poverty. What do you view as the biggest challenges to reducing overall poverty in Albuquerque, and what are some of your ideas for addressing those challenges?
So I've done a lot of work on fighting poverty in these past 4 years, and I'm really proud of that. One of the most dynamic people I've ever known in my life, Ona Porter. I'm sure a lot of people here know Ona Porter, and what a wonderful, energetic, smart woman she is. She does not take no for an answer. So with Ona Porter and Prosperity Works is her organization. There were 2 bills that came out of City Council to address the predatory lending. One of them was mine. One of them was Ike Benton's. They both passed, and they were both successful. Mine was to encourage the state legislature to cap fees at 36%. That finally happened this past session, not at 36%. It's more like 200%, but that's going to come down. We're going to bring that down to where it should be. And then Ike's, which is even a better bill, made it so that there has to be a distance between each of those predatory lenders. They don't like to be called predatory lenders, but you know what? That's what they are. The other thing I've done is, most recently what I did was, a lot of those people who go after those loans work for the city. The city has some very low-paying jobs. And people sometimes will do desperate things when they need money. And I know, I bet everybody in this room has had that, looked at the checkbook and there's like $20 and you need tires and you got to pay the rent. All right, so what I did was I arranged it so this company can come in and offer as a benefit to the employees of the city short-term loans that are reasonably rated. They're under 20%. I think they're 18%, which is a good rate of interest for a short-term loan, which means less than 1 year. Okay. The only thing is that they have to agree to have their payments taken out of their paycheck. There's no cost to the city. There's no risk to the city. If that individual departs, terminates from the city, fired, retires, quits, or whatever, that loan follows them. So we've gone one step further to make that workable, and that is we now have a local credit union who is willing to work with our employees after they depart the city to refinance those loans and get probably an even lower rate with a credit union. Gender pay equity, definitely a poverty fighting tool. It's one of the proudest things I've done since I've been on council. What this does is it requires vendors to report what they're paying their people who work, their employees. They have to pay it. They have to report how much they're paying, and by gender and by job category. We use the job categories by the department it's used by the Department of Lender. We are blind to experience, education, time on the job, all of those things that would justify paying one person more than another person, right? Just like the Department of Labor does. They are blind to those things. If a employer comes within 7% of pay equity, and I'm not saying that that's all right, that's not, but if they come within 7%, they may get a preference in bidding for a job. So why isn't that 0? I can hear you saying that. The reason it's not 0 is because the closer we get to 0, the more we see that those other conditions, like education, time on the job, all of that, that's when that comes into play. The only time that you could really reasonably expect 0 would be maybe entry-level jobs or jobs where they're usually lower paying jobs where everybody's doing the same thing, and it's fairly easy to replace people as they leave. But everything else, there's and the city does this to itself, so we're somewhere between 4 and 5%.
Thank you.
of equity.
I'm actually one of those people who, when I first read about that, was like, why isn't it 0? So I'm glad that you brought that up. My husband was defending you, and I was angry, but I'm glad that you explained that better. He's like, well, 7% is better than 10. I'm like, well, it's not enough, but thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to public safety. According to a report released last autumn by the FBI, New Mexico had the 3rd highest violent crime rate and 2nd highest property crime rate in the nation. Last year, violent crime and property crime in Albuquerque rose by 9.2% for violent crime and 11.5% for property crime. Would you please share with us what you consider to be among the largest contributors to Albuquerque's high crime rate, and how will you address these problems?
Yeah, it's out of control. Our crime is absolutely out of control. I'm sure some of the people here have heard me say that before, but that doesn't do much to address the problem. So I think we may not be able to agree on much of anything else, but I'll bet we all can agree that this is drug-driven. You know, the violent crimes as well as the property crimes. So I have just recently, and this will be before council, I think, well, it must be next month. Yeah, because we're at the end of the month already. My crime bill is going to take care of one little piece of this, right? And that little piece is the fencing of stolen materials. So we're going to require gold buyers and pawn stores to collect more information for each sale. So if I'm someone who walks in with a handful of gold and jewels or watches or anything, I don't walk out with cash. I have to go in, I will give a thumbprint for identification, I'll show a government-issued ID, and leave a mailing address. The gold buyer, the pawnbroker will have 3 days to do due diligence and make a report. These have to be photographed. I think they have to be photographed now anyway. And do due diligence to the best of their ability to make sure that this is not stolen property, right? And then and only then will they mail me a check. So because so much of our property crime is drug-driven, you know, that's going to pretty much stop that. Now, will they find another way? I'm sure this is not, I don't, you know, delude myself into saying that this is going to fix it, but it's one way, one thing to stop this, and then we'll, you know, fix whatever we need to fix going forward.
Okay. Now this is a multi-question question. So I'm going to go through it, and if you want me to repeat any of it, or if you want to just address parts of it, that's okay too, because 3 minutes is short. It'll take me 3 minutes to read the question. What is your definition of community policing? Is this something you consider implementing? How would you pressure the mayor to initiate the process if you do think it's something you want to consider? Which current structures within APD and City of Albuquerque would create difficulties to this implementation? And if you do think this is something you want to do, how will you plan on pressuring the mayor to address those obstacles?
Well, I don't think the mayor needs pressuring. Actually, I'm not even thinking about this mayor anymore. He's on his way out and pretty much checked out. So I don't think the future mayor will need much convincing. I think all of us want community policing, and I can tell you that the cops on the streets want to do that as well. We do need more police. We're at about right around 850 now. We need at least 150 more. Now we do have a new commander in the Northeast Heights, the Northeast substation. His name is Commander Joe Burke. And this guy he's got a fire under him. He's ambitious, and he really wants to work with my office. So he has committed. We had lunch a couple of weeks ago. He says, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Put more cops in the neighborhood and make sure they go down the alleys behind the stores, you know. Protect the stores and be in the neighborhoods more often." He said, "Okay, I'm going to have 2 officers per shift that are going to be dedicated to just patrolling." And then I said, "That's great. 2 is better than nothing." But, you know, we have to be realistic about this, too. If something happens, there's a bad accident on I-40, if there's a domestic somewhere, you know, he's going to probably have to pull one or both of them. I said, "I get it. Just do what you can do." So we all want community policing. We all want, you know, to have it the way it was when, you know, I remember one place I lived where I saw the same guy in the same police car going up and down the streets in my neighborhood, and just don't see that too much anymore.
Yep. All righty. Research shows that early childhood experiences of child abuse, abandonment, homelessness, parents on drugs, it all greatly multiplies the risk that children will grow up to be criminals. Now, you've already talked about how you hope to reduce crime. What will you do to improve the early lives of children in Albuquerque, including providing support to their parents who are at risk because of poverty, family violence, or drug abuse?
Okay, so lots I can say about this. First of all, one of my assignments, because I asked for it when I first came on council, was ABC Community Schools Board. Does anybody know what ABC Community? There's 1 person, 2 people, 3 people. It is one of the best things that we have in Albuquerque. It's a partnership between the city, the county, APS, now UNM, the Chamber of Commerce, and I can't remember what, it's several. When we go in to a school, we have to be invited, and in fact, they have to apply, because we just don't have the funding to be in every school. So what it really takes is a principal who's really motivated. And when we go in there, we can help turn schools around. We typically see attendance go up. We typically see more engagement from the family. Grades go up. I mean, it's just, and it bleeds over to the neighborhood, so it's a wonderful thing. That's one thing. Now, the other thing that I really heard was little guys, the real little ones, like 0 to 3 years old. So the city has what they call early Head Start. Early Head Start takes, you know, from pregnancy to 3 years old, and then they go into regular Head Start, the big kids, 3 to 5 years old. This program, we are in jeopardy of losing this program at the city because of mismanagement. That's not something I really want to tell people, but it's true. You need to know this. This is from gross mismanagement over the past maybe 10 years. We had been getting this grant year after year after year. And I believe it was 2 years ago, last year, 2 years ago, we were told no more. This is going to, you know, go up for bid. You're going to have to apply for it. We used to do home visits. There used to be, you know, employees who worked in family and community service who'd go out to underserved neighborhoods, you know, maybe where there's a lot of turnover, knock on doors. Find out where the kids were. Who has kids? Maybe there's a brand new mother who's never had a child before, has no idea. You know, this happens, you know, particularly if you don't have any support. We need to start doing that again.
New Mexico has the highest number of untested rape kits per capita, making it the worst in the nation. As of December 2016, there were more than 5,400 untested rape kits. 5,400. In March, the state legislature passed 2 bills to address how law enforcement handles this backlog of untested kits, to reform the process moving forward, and to leverage available resources to facilitate progress. How will you address women's healthcare issues, including the city's rape kit backlog, and provide safe access to women's clinics like Southwest Women's Options and Planned Parenthood?
Well, actually, I know quite a bit about the access to clinics. Years ago, I was a coordinator for volunteers at those clinics, patient escorts. As far as that goes, we will definitely have police presence where and when needed. I've already volunteered to Planned Parenthood that I would be more than happy to sponsor whatever legislation they felt might be needed to grant like a perimeter around any kind of a health provider from protesters. But the rape kits, yeah, that's a heartbreaker. There are 300 kits that we have identified that must be tested. And when I say that, I mean that they're prosecutable, they're witnesses, these are good cases that need to be done to put the right people in jail. And they haven't been done. So we've asked, other counselors and I have asked from the dais, Commander McDonald and the people who run our labs, why not? The answers that we get is that they don't have enough people. People they do have, it takes too long to train them. It's difficult to bring them on board without localized training, and that the procedures, their processes and procedures are very lengthy, and so we said, well, is that necessary? We asked other people, other people who ran labs, and they said, no, you don't really have to take that long for either training or processing. So finally, Chris and I went out there and took the tour, and we stopped several times during that tour to have conversations. I said, so, when are you going to do this? When are you going to start working on revamping your curriculum? When are you going to, go over your procedures and processes again to try to shorten them up? And they had no plan for that. But I'll tell you, yeah, I know, this is sad. It really makes you want to vote for me, doesn't it? But you know what? This is the type of candidate I am. I'm not going to sit here and just nod and smile and everything's peachy, because people need to know about this. But I've got some good news on that. I just found out, I don't know if y'all know Connie Monahan, but she's the lady spearheading this. Bless her heart. And she's been giving us a lot of information and support of counselors on this topic. She has told me that yes, they have started. They have started reviewing their curriculum, looking for places where they can save some time, as well as their lab procedures. So this is big. This is really big.
So
about it. I just have to stop and think, what if it was me or my daughter or my niece? And I think we all have to ask ourselves that. Environmental justice. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to define that. Environmental justice assures that all people are afforded equal access to a healthy environment regardless of race, culture, location, or economic class, with fair and meaningful participation in environmental decision-making. It ensures legal remedies that respect vulnerable communities and neighborhoods and protects them from inequitable and disproportionate impacts resulting from, for example, unfair zoning practices and industries that emit pollutants, operate dangerous transportation modes, dump contaminants, salvage dangerous materials, or store chemicals near where people live. Where do you stand on the environmental justice issues affecting the low-income neighborhoods such as San Jose, Wells Park, Greater Gardner, and the International District?
You know, I've met with all of the, well, not with all of those people, but with their leaders several times. And in fact, just today I wasn't able to go to the LUPS meeting in which they took public comment for the Integrated Development Ordinance, but they showed up and talked at the LUPS meeting. You know, I think we need to protect everybody. You know, in some of these neighborhoods, you know, I don't know, you know, if the neighbors were there first and then somehow the residential area component was there first and then somehow the industrial grew up around them, and how that happened, because we wouldn't do it now. We're not going to put, you know, a gas processing plant on the west side in the middle of a neighborhood. So I'm not really sure how those happen. Now Martineztown is special. They were done an injustice some time ago, and again, we're talking about zoning, so I'm going to get over my head here really quickly, but let me tell you what I know. They have kind of a real spotty zoning. So if we're next door neighbor, you could be zoned commercial and I could be zoned residential. And I'm not really sure exactly how that happened, but it was a mistake and it shouldn't have happened. It happened decades ago. And so under C2, you could do all kinds of things, you know, and I would just have to kind of put up with it, right? But I can also tell you that their city councilor has come up with, it's not a perfect solution, but it's a pretty good one, really, and he was going to pay for it, so that individually, you know, everybody who lived there could decide which way they wanted to go. And he was going to pay for it, and their president said, refused it. So, you know, it's difficult. So what do you do after that? I'm not really sure. I certainly have the sympathy for them, and I'd like to help them find a solution, but I don't know what that would be, and I thought that was the best one that I could think of.
On the same thought, what are your thoughts on the health inequities of families in low-income communities who are overburdened with heavy polluting industries?
Well, it's not fair. You know, it's not fair for people, particularly people who can't afford to move, or many of them anyway, may not have the means to move to a different house. You know, to make them bear the brunt of producing whatever is being produced, or may not want to. I guess too. Yeah, it's not fair.
Okay. So these are questions that were submitted this evening by people here in our audience, and several of them have to do with the same topic. So I'm going to kind of lump them together. I'm going to read all three,
Okay.
but they're all pretty much the same topic. Democracy dollars. That means that each eligible voter receives certain number of democracy dollars from the city to spend for qualified publicly financed candidates. What is your opinion of this? Wait, I'm going to go on because it all has to do with public financing. How can we improve our current system of public financing so candidates can focus on the needs of communities? And the last one to do with public financing is, what is your position on public financing? Please elaborate on why you support or oppose it.
Well, I love public financing. This is my my second campaign publicly financed. I'd love to see every race publicly financed. And in fact, I think we would probably spend less money, you know, if you think of it, you know, globally, rather, you know, a macro view of it rather than individual races. I love public financing. So Barry can't come up to me in December and say, remember that $100 I gave you, or remember that $1,000 I gave you? You know, it allows the candidate to go in, you know, to that position pretty much free and clear, you know. Now, there are things that I can accept as a publicly financed candidate, and that's a little bit of in-kind, you know, like I ask for postage stamps, you know. But most of it, you know, the dollars, you know, is I worked really hard. Not only did I work really hard, but my team worked really, really hard during the month of May to qualify, and so I get $1 per voter. So in the democracy dollars, oh, that was fascinating. I don't know much.
So can I ask, is the person who wrote this question still here?
The question originated with someone with Common Cause New Mexico, so
Okay.
it's really coming from them.
Yeah.
So do we know, is this an actual thing, or is
Yes,
it an idea?
Yeah, Stephanie Myers, I am consulting with Common Cause. Hi, Councilor Gibson. I didn't write the question, but we did submit it online. Vicki did. Democracy Dollars is a program that's been instituted in the city of Seattle. It was passed in 2015 by the voters. It did not amend their constitution, but it is a city ordinance that was done by ballot initiative. It's something that Common Cause is working with a group of organizations to do in 2018, and it is a form of public financing that is new.
So what do
So if you
think
have any
about that?
specific questions, I think, Counselor, we had an initial conversation, but we didn't have the details fleshed out. And it's a real, I would say, proactive way for voters to contribute to candidates that qualify for public financing versus our existing system that is more of a passive. You receive a certain allotment of money based on the number of registered voters in your district.
So, but isn't that kind of like having an election? So if this was the population of Albuquerque, we'd all get $1 to give to the candidate who we wanted to finance? Does it work like that?
So it would, the qualifying criteria would be the same as it is now. What it's
Okay.
gonna do is replace the piece of our current city charter that's unconstitutional around the matching funds. And it would replace it with this mechanism that is funded by the city. So if we're all a voter in this room, and some municipalities are looking at doing not just voters, but anybody eligible to donate to a campaign, would receive a number of democracy dollar vouchers in a certain amount that they could give to a candidate of their choice. But it's not their funds, it's the city's funds.
Yeah, yeah. And that would be in lieu of matching? Or would
We're
that be
currently
right out
looking
the
at
gate?
Fiscal implications, yeah, in lieu of matching, not necessarily in lieu of the $1 per
Okay.
registered voter you
All
currently
right.
receive.
Huh. Still kind of sounds like an
And what,
election to me.
no, well,
I mean,
Well,
well,
it
you're
sounds-
casting your vote with your dollars.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like, it sounds to me like,
Yeah.
you know,
We're
you're what you said earlier, that you like to think about things, and you don't like to just, you're thinking about this now.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's more of a conversation to go.
That's right. And that's why we're learning from the city of Seattle and wanted to wait and not put it on the ballot this election year, wait until 2018, because we want to see what sort of administrative and fiscal implications
Cool.
are associated with it.
Yeah.
But it's new and a different way for public.
So this is something new for you to look into.
Yep.
Thank you
Yep,
for asking the
excellent,
question.
of course. All right. We did have a question also about healthy workforce, but I think we addressed that, so I'm not going to read this question because I think we went through that already. Last question. We're almost there. What policy ideas do you have that will help create a more inclusive democracy and increase transparency and accountability?
Well, I think what we're doing tonight is a step in that direction. So I really want to thank everybody who put this together. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I really think that we can never do too much to inform voters. And I really wish that Eric were here. I really do. It would have been so much more interesting than just to hear me yammer on.
It's pretty interesting.
I don't see anybody nodding off yet. So, but what I do is I host 2 town halls a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And I really hope, I mean, you don't have to be a constituent, anybody can come. But they're usually pretty well attended. We'll feed you a little bit. And we usually get a pretty good speaker. We did ABC Community Schools last time, and people really seemed to enjoy that. Also do 2 coffees a month. The fourth week of the month, a Monday morning, and usually Tuesday evening, but we're doing Monday night this time. All of this is on my website, DianeGibsonABQ.com, and as well as the city website. My website's easier to find. So I'm probably the easiest counselor in Albuquerque to get a meeting with. It seems like everybody has my phone number. I tell my staff, I tell our campaign workers, give my phone number to anybody. It rings my phone in my purse. You know, part of the reason I started thinking about running for this office is I could not get a hold of my city councilor. He wouldn't pick up the phone. He wouldn't return my calls. His staff wouldn't call me back. And I thought, and that just ticked me off. I thought the least that we can expect is a call back. So, you know, Chris and I work really, really hard to get back to you in the same day. If we can't do that, it'll be the next day. And if you fall through the cracks, and that has happened, I won't deny it, you know, we will apologize profusely and really mean it. We try really hard to not have many of those. So, you know, that's the democratic process, you know. Call me up. Ask me why I voted the way I did. You know, you should. I wish people would call me up and say, what were you thinking? Why did you vote this way? And I'll tell you. I'll tell you the, you know, the truth that I know to be true.
Do you have any last words you'd like to share with the group tonight?
Yes, early voting starts September 13th. And I've got some cards over there with my phone number and and with the dates of the early voting and a little bit about me. And so please pick one up if I didn't already get one to you. Please go out and vote. Grab your neighbors. Pull them out to vote. And, you know, we're not talking about Washington here, but what we're talking about is really where the rubber meets the road. You know, this is how, you know, how we live and where we live and the schools that we send our kids to, you know. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you. Vote. And go tell everybody to vote. Make little signs in your car and put them on the windows and say, did you know there's an election? Vote, vote, vote. A lot of people don't know. Get out the vote.
If you need to change your voter registration or to register, we do have someone that can register you.
Hey, Charles. My partner. We met Bill. We met at the last. Yeah.